the agriculture industry has been devastated recently. Hurricanes have caused a loss of over $1 billion. Significant labor shortages leave farms scrambling, and extreme weather has decimated the past year's harvest. But there's hope because of one sole reason: farmers always find a way. Let's take a look at the incredibly hard work that farmers are doing on a daily basis as we examine the 2023 U.S. harvest of 4 key crops. We'll start with a crop that the U.S. produced 4.1 billion bushels of in 2023: soybeans. The U.S. saw a 2% decrease from 2022. The extreme heat and dryness in the Midwest during May and June hurt a lot of the crop, since soybeans need moisture to develop in those months. But let's zoom in on the hard workers in the U.S. soybean industry and take a look inside an Illinois soybean farm. Illinois produced about 648 million bushels for the year, which was the most in the U.S., but also down about 4% from the previous year. Still, planting and harvesting soybeans is far from easy. While all plants need nutrients to grow, soybeans get nitrogen from the atmosphere. They're able to do this by forming a symbiotic relationship with a bacterium in their root nodules. Because of it, many farmers actually like planting soybeans because it requires less nitrogen fertilizer than most plants. In late September, the soybeans start to mature. The leaves turn yellow, and soon they'll turn brown and fall off, which is when the soybeans are ready to be harvested. Similar to corn and wheat, a combine is used to harvest soybeans. The combine separates the soybean from their pods and stems and puts them into a holding tank. It's then put onto a grain truck, where it gets transported to a grain elevator facility. The grain elevator stores the seeds as the farmer searches for a processor to buy them. But let's now move down south to Florida, where oranges are being harvested at a historic level, but not in a good way. In the 2022 to 2023 season, Florida produced just 15.85 million boxes of oranges. That's a number Florida hasn't seen since 1930. What's the reason for the sharp decline? Weather disasters and citrus greening. Persistent hurricanes have wreaked havoc on citrus crop production, with Hurricane Ian in 2022 alone causing an estimated $1 billion in losses for the agriculture industry and resulting in reduced acreage allocated to orange cultivation. On top of that, citrus greening has been an issue. It comes from an Asian bug discovered in 1998. Once a tree's been infected, there's no known cure, and it'll deteriorate until it eventually dies. But there's more. Orange harvesting is also labor-intensive, and the younger generation doesn't seem to like a lot of hard manual labor. Mix that with the labor shortage in the agriculture industry, and it's led to a sharp decline in production. But just how are Florida oranges harvested? Once the oranges are ripe, pickers go out into the orange groves with ladders and pick the ripe oranges. From there, vehicles take the oranges to packing houses or trucks. Some farms also use mechanical harvesters that shake the fruit off trees, which reduces labor costs. But those aren't always perfect and can sometimes damage the fruit. Still, no doubt with labor shortages, orange pickers may start to find more creative and faster ways to pick fruit off trees. But let's head now from Florida to California, where Brussels sprouts are grown and harvested. The U.S. produces around 70 million pounds of Brussels sprouts every year, and about 95% of that is grown in California. San Mateo, Monterey, and Santa Cruz counties contain thousands of acres of Brussels sprouts. California is actually the ideal place for them, since they're a cool weather vegetable and do best when temperatures are around 65 to 80 degrees. So let's go inside a California farm and see how such a unique vegetable is harvested. 100 days after planting, the plants are ready to be harvested. Although Brussels sprouts mature from the bottom upward, farmers can wait until a stalk is covered in mature sprouts and cut the whole thing all at once. For that, they'll need a sharp knife and will need to cut the stalk as close to the ground as possible. Other farmers have resorted to specialized machines that harvest the Brussels sprouts mechanically. After they're picked, the sprouts are placed in baskets, packaged, and refrigerated. But overall, Brussels sprout supply has been thin. Some California farms aren't growing sprouts anymore, but demand is getting stronger. During the holidays, sprouts consumption grows, and there's always a jump in demand during the holiday season. But less supply and more demand means that, unfortunately for consumers, prices have risen. And speaking of demand, let's head over to the south for one of the most popular summer fruits. Watermelons love to grow in warm temperatures, and 80% of the watermelon production in the US comes from Florida, Georgia, Texas, and California. So let's head back to Florida. Not for oranges this time, but to see their watermelons. The state produces about 1 billion pounds of watermelons every year and accounts for about 30% of overall US production of the fruit. On one North Florida farm, they produce 2.2 million pounds of watermelons over 6 weeks. But there's a problem. Because of how labor-intensive the work is, no one wants to harvest watermelons. So the farm hires 150 immigrant workers using the H-2A government guest worker program. These immigrant workers labor for hours on end and can work as many hours as they want, with bonuses for the amount of watermelons they harvest. But let's zoom in and see what they're actually doing. Watermelons need a mix of the sun, bees, well-drained soil, and water to grow. Bee colonies are placed in the field when the male flowers start to appear. After 60 days, the vine presents its first watermelons. Within 3 months, they're ready to harvest. How do they know? One main clue is the ground spot, which should be yellow and large. Many fields are picked twice because each watermelon plant produces 2 to 3 fruit that can be harvested. They use a sharp knife to cut the watermelon from the vine. A crew follows the cutters and passes the watermelon from one person to the next until it's loaded into a truck to be transported to the packing shed. At the packing shed, watermelons are all inspected and sorted according to size. Then they're loaded into gigantic bins for shipping and distribution. Since the entire process is done by hand, you can see how the intense manual work might deter a lot of the younger generation from becoming farmers. Which is why farms are turning to immigrant workers, and in some cases, high-tech robots, to do the harvesting. And with a significant labor shortage threatening farms across America, let us know in the comments what you'd suggest to help solve the labor issue and get young people out on farms to be doing the tough but glorious work of growing and harvesting crops again. So as you head to the supermarket each week and grab your fruits and veggies, keep an eye on the weather and the 2024 harvest numbers. Because farmers are continually hard at work behind the scenes, under the radar. And it's about time the unsung heroes of America finally get their due. Make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with the evolving world of farming.